I had a parishioner here who was, he died during the first lockdown, and he had been a vicar's son during the Jersey occupation. Him and his brother had an absolute hoot doing all this kind of underground resistance stuff with their dad, right under the noses of the Nazi occupation. Nevertheless, he said the most eeriest thing that he remembers out of all of that, including all the hairiness of thinking at any moment we could get shot or deported to some camp for this, was that on Sunday morning, German officers would come to church, sing the hymns, put money in the collection, and say, well, thank you very much for the service. And he said, we didn't know what to do.
Hello all, welcome back to Raw Faith. I'm in my local church of St Mary's, Malden today, but we still have one more episode from Devon. Just as we were finishing up the holiday, Dad and I made a last-minute stop in a church called All Saints in Malborough. St Peter and All Saints in Malborough was built in 1170 AD and is one of the largest stone buildings in Devon. This building, which dominates the area in its size and power, in fact offers a quiet retreat for intimate faith. We managed to meet the priest there, who was called Father Daniel French, who is the co-host to the Irreverend Podcast and a writer for the Spectator. And it was his last week of service after 17 years, just as he was moving to Greenwich University in London, where he's going to be a chaplain. He talked about how his faith for so long was cerebral. It made sense intellectually and he could argue it, but he didn't feel it, which is exactly where I feel at the moment. We then read through Matthew chapter 8 together, the first few readings where Christ is cleansing lepers and he's also healing the servants of Centurions, who were the oppressors of the day. And it was quite nice to see that whether you're part of the establishment or you're an outcast, a leper, Christ has got time for you. As long as you come to him humbly and you want to be a part of what he's doing, he's got time for you no matter who you are. And there was so much else. Father Daniel had so many interesting things to say. The episode, we only did 2 readings, but the episode is incredibly long, but absolutely packed with interesting discoveries that we made along the way. So we really hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you back in Essex next week. Thank you.
I was brought up by my paternal grandparents in Devon, who were religious, but until I was a mid-teenager, didn't go to church at all, though it was very, very definitely there. And, we watched Robert Powell's Jesus of Nazareth. I got Bibles at Christmas, children's Bibles that were very endearing and engaging. We talked about prayer and God. But I think they'd fallen out with a vicar or something sometime before I was born. And anyway, they started going to church when I was about 14, and I was really curious to the whole thing as to what this was about. And they went first of all for a month on their own and left me behind. And that actually got me quite itching about what are they seeing that I'm not seeing. So eventually I went, but Granny had this thing about Sunday best, which is a tradition that's almost been lost now. And rather painfully, she made me wear my school uniform, which I already hated. So this didn't endear me to going to Sunday. Now, the parish priest was canny enough to see, or to somehow read my discomfort, and essentially said, look, if you go on a confirmation course and become an altar server, you won't have to wear your school uniform. You wear whatever you like. So I came to Jesus because I liked the clothes, or didn't like the school uniform. Anyway, and I went for, I participated fully in the life of the church and the youth club about 15 miles from here. It was great. I had some of my chums were also altar servers or in the choir. Nevertheless, I think my faith was very cerebral. I believed in God as God was a sort of a supercomputer somewhere outside the universe that the TARDIS hadn't yet discovered. You know, that was kind of like where I sort of saw it. An important thing to believe in, but it hadn't intersected really my heart. And then sort of tragically, my grandfather died very suddenly of a major heart attack when I was at sixth form. And I think the weeks that followed, yes, they were turbulent in terms of grief, but I felt very carried through that, and it became a sort of personal Pentecost, is the way I can describe it. That I felt that I'd lost my adopted grandfather, my adopted father and grandfather, but somehow my heavenly Father was carrying me through this, and that I wasn't falling off a precipice, but that there was this sense that I was being held. And then I'd say a couple months after that, having had quite an interest in Greeks and Romans, and I'd watched the TV series of Robert Graves' I, Claudius with Derek Jacobi.
I remember that.
I watched the whole thing and thought, I'm really interested in this period of time. And why the heck didn't I do A-level history? Anyway, on the family bookshelf was a copy of St. Luke's Gospel, one of these little sort of good news editions that you could put in your pocket. Looking there, I've still got it actually, looking very sort of unloved, and I thought, do you know what, I'll pick this up. And then I did one of these things which I wouldn't recommend to anyone, is I sort of randomly opened the page, closed my eyes and said, come on God, speak to me.
Oh yeah, I've done that.
Have you done that? I don't think it's we've all probably done it, but anyway, I did it with a view to prizing from God some idea of what is, who should I vote for? What's good politics? At 17, you tend to kind of consolidate your worldview. And I had all sorts of conflicting ideas about this. Because when you're that age, you want to change the world. You want to be at the spearhead of things. And I didn't know where to go with any of it, really. And I did this, come on, show me your politics. And I opened up to Luke chapter 6. That was the golden rule, do unto others as you would have. I mean, I'm not making this up. I love your enemies. Do good to those.
We've just done that, actually.
And it blew my mind away.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, okay, this is the highest standard. I'm being called not to be just nice to my chums. I'm not being called to... there's a kind of activist type who cancels everybody who doesn't agree with them. I'm called to something incredibly demanding. I don't know if I can do this, but I know it's worth giving it a go, and there's no higher standard. And this is what I'm going to be at the pearly gates judged at, is not how much did you love your family, your chums, your friends, and those who agreed with you, but how did you treat those who you actually found most difficult, your adversaries, your enemies, those who wound you up, those who had completely inverse opinions to them. Did you try to destroy them, cancel them, or did you divide the world and in the end your heart into them and us? And I thought, this is calling for a life beyond the great human schism. And I just remember sat there being blown away by this. And I don't know if you remember, but it was round about, in fact, that year later on, I had another sort of moment coming back from church, switching on the telly. It was Remembrance Sunday, and the IRA released a bomb at Enniskillen at the War Memorial.
You're not going to talk about forgiveness now, are you?
I was...
Go on, I bring this up every time we talk about forgiveness. I remember the Enniskillen bombing very clearly.
And, there was, his name's just escaped me, holding his daughter, Marie, wasn't it, the nurse, who died and she spoke a few last words, Daddy, I love you.
Yeah.
And he went to the camera and talked about loving enemies and peace.
Yes.
And the IRA is only going to be defeated through love.
Do you know, there must be so many of us that remember that so clearly.
And I just remember that, watching that, coming back, having my tea and donut after church, watching this, crying and thinking, that is extraordinary.
This has come up in our videos, doesn't it, in forgiveness.
You mentioned that before.
Which is, how can you forgive people that have done that? But that's what God asks you to do.
And I thought, he's defeating evil.
Yes.
They cannot escape this tidal wave of that he has just produced. Anyway, as it was, after I was ordained, and my first Good Friday as a deacon, I was in a church in South London near Croydon, and long day doing all this head spinning stuff. Crashed out in my little bedroom, put the telly on, and it was Ben-Hur.
Oh yeah.
Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, Ben-Hur. I love it. I could gorge on the whole 5 hours of it, with all the great and good, with the Cecil B. DeMille, Technicolor.
The widescreen.
Massive production.
Absolutely brilliant. And sat there on my little colour telly watching this. And I'd come in very late, and it's Ben-Hur realising that the man who saved him many years back, who gave him water, is now being crucified. And so he's looking at the cross, Charlton Heston, with his big jaw, sort of completely despairing at this. And the BBC interrupted the programme with a news flash to say that the peace talks, the Good Friday Agreement, and this would be 1998, had concluded positively.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go back to the programme.
Wow.
And Charlton Heston says, I think if I got this right, he says, by his wounds we have been healed.
Wow.
And I remember I just went to my knees and thought of that Anskin and Bonnoing and thought, you were right. And I think that's been my sort of heart to heart, sort of encounter with God has been through these sort of moments, these little sort of personal Pentecosts that have kind of contained me over those years. So it began as a heady belief, and then in teens, on the back of grief, became a heart-to-heart experience. Yeah. At times, I think we underestimate actually how I use the word scary in the positive sense. How scary, how awesomely fearful God is. That his presence and his demands on us to love others actually is a flipping nuisance at times.
It's very difficult, isn't
because
it?
99% of the time I think I'd rather just have you and all that you're trying to push on me in a little shoebox that I put in an attic and I forget about.
You can't get
and
away
I bring
from it.
I bring it down when I'm feeling nice woolly feelings. And more as time's gone on, I've felt that the nagging presence of God, and often I've to say no, I don't think I don't think I want this now, and
no.
But he keeps knocking. Is it that poem, isn't it, The Hound of Heaven, who chased? I wish I could quote poetry, but that the Hound of Heaven is this poem about. It's a bit like the Song of Songs, of being chased by God as if God is a hound, wanting to. He's not going to let go of us.
No. I mean, I remember there's a very sort of common meme that I've seen quite a few times around the place, and it's if you want to feel good, buy a bottle of port. That'll make you feel good. don't buy religion. That won't make you feel that good, you know, because it's such a challenge. It's a continuous challenge. And like you say, the golden rule, do unto others as they do to you. Simple, straightforward, but almost impossible for a human being to do. You know, you're trying to get to you're trying to get to God's kingdom on earth by following that rule. You might get close-ish, but to do that continually for a human being is a very difficult, big ask, isn't it? You know, but it's such a simple, small rule. And I'm a big believer in taking my Christianity into my work, so it's with me all the time. So even though you're in a commercial environment, you're in a capitalist society, and you've got to bring God's love into that all the time, and the comfort that it brings all the way through your working life. It's quite a lot of conflict, but it works. It actually does work, I find. It builds relationships, it builds confidence, it builds trust, you know, and it helps me in my work. But it is a big ask.
Many a time I thought, God, give me a break.
Yeah.
Have a rest now.
Well, you must do in your profession, very definitely.
Our priest, Father Robert, used to have a saying. He used to quote, I can't remember who he was quoting, but he would say, "Lord, make me chaste, but not yet."
It's Augustine.
So
it's almost.
it's like a joke or a meme.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's almost an Oscar Wilde type of quote, isn't it? It's got that kind of humour and self-perception that's so rich.
So did you, when you had that revelation with the Gospel of Luke, did you immediately know, I got to be a priest? Or was that
it came a few weeks later. A friend of mine knocked on the door. One of a few chums at sixth form, and Andy said, "Oh, I'm going to be a priest, Daniel." And I just said, "So am I. Come in, let's have a cup of tea." And he said, "Oh, I didn't know that." I said, "I didn't know that. So I've just said it to you either."
Really?
I said, "I think I do need to sit down." And it just happened like that. And I knew. Something had obviously bubbled through and prompted me to that sudden decision. And I went off to University of Kent, which is now going to merge with the University of Greenwich, I now see in the news. I went to the University of Kent and did computer science, which is, again, me trying, I think, to escape God's clutches. But also, I did think it would be good to bring to the table a craft, a talent, rather than just be, a jobbing priest who is no good for anything else. I've tended to be Mr. IT Fix-It ever since, which is a blessing, but often with Microsoft products, a curse.
And so, at the service, they mentioned you've been here 17 years.
17 years, yeah.
Wow.
That's a good run.
It is, yeah. They can't.
How does it feel looking back on that now that you're on your way?
It's been a wonderful place to be at. Devon's a funny county, in that a lot of people try to escape it in their teens and 20s and then come back in their 40s.
Yeah, Cornwall's like that, apparently. Yeah.
I mean, I never thought I'd come back to Devon. And we'd been everywhere. And it was a chance advert in the Church Times and a combination of funding in our last parish, which was an inner city church up in Scotland, where my wife's family are from. And funding had run out, so we were on the move. We'd been there for 8 years. My elderly grandmother lived nearby here and was struggling. She had no other relatives. There was the advert in the Church Times for Salcombe, Malborough, Galmpton, Hope Cove. And I thought, I'll give this a go. I don't think I'll get it. And we had 2 babies at the time and came down here. What's lovely about this area is it's not only just rural. I don't consider myself a particularly rural person. I'm not very wellies and green jackets, and I'm not really. I'm a bit dyspraxic, so the whole sailing maritime thing I find really difficult. That's why I'm a bit Mr. Bean on the on the bodyboards and all that.
Oh, right, yeah.
But
Sure.
I did think that Salcombe and Malborough have this amazing life in the summer, where half of London, it feels like, comes down to here, and actually this would be quite a fun, very different kind of place to come to than say the middle of Dartmoor or at Newton Abbot or somewhere. I mean, as great as those places are, I just thought, this has a bit of a
Felt right.
this feels right, and it's zoomed by actually. Today I've just said goodbye to my 2 teenagers starting university as they go off to city adventures, and the time from arriving here to leaving has just zoomed by.
The interesting thing now is you're off to a new community.
I know,
You're off to the big city.
I know.
Greenwich University.
Greenwich University, yeah.
Chaplain.
Yes, Chaplain.
It's
Yeah.
a new position, isn't it?
It is. It's a completely new position. So we're starting almost from zero in terms of it's a blank sheet. There has been some wonderful volunteering work by a couple of volunteers, but on the whole, it's pretty much starting it from nothing. And I think it's a really interesting time for university chaplaincy, because in the old days, say, let's say up to about the 1960s, university chaplaincy generated the majority of Christian leadership.
Oh, really?
This is where
Yes, I see,
men and women were forged.
Yes, we came from. Yes, to lead the church.
Lead the church, or to lead in the world the Christian message.
Yes.
And I think that has clearly been lost. And I think you'll probably find that 2/3 of university chaplaincies don't engage with that problem. That they're essentially welfare institutions who are dealing with sort of whack-a-mole crises.
Yeah, interesting.
Whereas I think there's a new model that could come out where a university chaplaincy could propose a healthy, deep, let's put it out there, a healthy, deep Anglican Orthodox Christian vision, which didn't need to be threatening to any other faith system, but could engage with them where necessary in ways that were creative. But actually, on the whole, sort of talked into the depth and the wisdom of the Anglican tradition, and gave confidence to young men and women to be able to take that mantle, to take that mantle up, and to be intellectually and spiritually stretched. I had a little bit of a mixed experience of university chaplaincy at Kent, but I'd say that the friends that I made formed me, so that the chaplaincy community got me to where I needed to be, that I could enter a seminary system and be in the right kind of place and have a certain confidence to be able to not only my spiritual life, but to be able to captain things. That I learned, I did 3 years and I learned coding, but I think what I learned, which is more valuable, was how to put on events.
That's so important.
Do you know? And to do it with a confidence.
And manage people's expectations and
And I'd love to be able to take a number of people and together kind of relearn those skills and be able to hone down on that. Stretch ourselves intellectually, spiritually, and not so much to be thinking, this is a safe space where no one's going to challenge me.
No.
This is a deep place where I'm going to be stretched. Actually, and And I think actually in that stretching, what you find is that the sort of red meat Christianity, the deepest Christianity, I think what C.S. Lewis called the sort of deep church Christianity, actually comes forward as a winner.
Yeah, definitely.
And the more sort of wishy-washy versions don't really hold tight.
Yeah, I see. Yes.
And so I think we should actually offer a kind of robust chaplaincy.
Yeah.
I don't mean sort of going out proselytizing everybody,
No.
but actually creates communities that are confident in who they are, and particularly I think confident in our nation's inherent faith, which is held by the Church of England and the mainstream denominations.
Yeah,
I think it's all to play for.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the world has become lost, I think. It wasn't when I was a young man. It was quite guided and you felt safe and secure. You might not have practiced your Christianity regularly because of when I went through my teens, I lost it. But you knew it was always there and you knew it was always safe to go back to. There was always a parachute. Do you know what I mean? And I think nowadays there isn't that parachute.
No, exactly. I mean, I think, I know that there's a lot of talk in the Quiet Revival about young men coming to faith, and the same not happening to women. Gen Z women are essentially becoming more progressivist, more liberal in that. But you can hear some interesting dissenting voices on this, because in the end, if life is just simply boundaryless, if there are no guardrails, if imposing rules is somehow oppressive, then you end up with a kind of tyranny where a girl dates a boy.
There's no structural direction.
No. You look at the Bible with its 66 books. We're in a culture where we're told that reading is rapidly in decline, that more and more people are reading less and less, that our screen time and our doom scrolling is affecting the way that even our eye muscles operate. So the idea of reading an extremely dense book, I mean, what's fascinating about Scripture, as I think Jordan Peterson has said, it's the most hypertext document that any civilization has produced. Every sentence is laden with huge amounts of meaning. Well, if paper is scarce and ink is rare, you're going to make sure that every word has the gravity of a black hole. You know what I mean? And
that's a good way of thinking about it.
And so you've got this mountain that is presented, and I can see a lot of people could look at this and think this is like being given Mount Everest and told, go away and explore it. After a few minutes, you think, well, I've just read the first few lines, and none of it means sense, or it's actually tiring. And I think it requires a sort of different catechesis. Really, it requires a lot of accompaniment that we've not given in the past. And whereas I think generations back, you could just hand a Bible to someone and they'd be used to, maybe at school they've read Shakespeare, they've read the great texts, they've written essays by hand. To be able to sort of cope with this, I think we need a lot of guidance and hand holding, but it is possible.
Well, it's one of the reasons we asked you here.
It's a wonderful thing, I think, to be able to start climbing the most extraordinary book.
Well, on that, let's get our mountain gear together and dive right in.
When Jesus had come down from the mountain, great crowds followed him, And there was a leper who came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you choose, you can make me clean. He stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I do choose. Be made clean. Immediately, his leprosy was cleansed. Then Jesus said to him, See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded as a testimony to them.
Well, the first line, when Jesus had come down from the mountain, we've just had the Sermon on the Mount. So there is an allusion here, isn't there, to Moses coming down from the mountain with the law. I mentioned earlier on about Ben-Hur. If you remember, there was also the other Charlton Heston film, The Ten Commandments.
Oh, wow.
And it's done so magnificently, that Moses has two descents. The first one, he comes down to calamity, and the golden calf, and idolatry, and chaos, community that has been saved. But what is it in even the most pious who've gone through the miracle of the parting of the Red Seas that would nevertheless think that they should forge an image and try and animate other gods to take that image in, while Moses is up there with God on Sinai receiving the law, and so then there's a reset, isn't there, that Moses goes back after smashing the tablets, and comes down the second time. And here Jesus only comes down once. There isn't that there is. There's something of a reception. There are great crowds waiting for him. And yet there's also this fellow who's a leper. And I wonder how the crowds would have reacted to this. Everyone took two steps back. What kind of social distancing panic was happening? But down during the lockdowns, if you sneezed in Tesco's, suddenly you've got a whole eye to yourself.
It's interesting because we've just heard the Sermon on the Mount, arguably the most merciful and loving doctrine ever. Would they immediately forget that and step back from the leper?
We don't know. It doesn't feel like they're presenting him to Jesus.
No.
Does it?
No.
He's part of the crowd.
No, he was just there. Just make me clean. Yeah.
What about you, Dad?
I found it interesting that Jesus said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone. In other words, keep it secret, but go, show yourself to the priest. So this was don't tell any of the crowd, don't tell anybody what I've done, but go directly to the priest to tell him what has happened. So there's definitely that Jesus is using this influencing the Pharisees of the time to say, God's working. This is God. So I suppose it could be a challenge to the Pharisee. It could be a challenge to the established church. So I'm finding that interesting about it. And offer the gift that Moses commanded. So what? I don't understand that. I'm not getting that. Father, perhaps you can help. What gift is he offering to the priest? The leper?
I think it's from the book of Leviticus.
All right.
That if you receive a healing, a cleansing, that there's an appropriate process of being integrated into the community by making a gift.
Right. Okay.
So you then get your passport to.
Oh, I see.
That gives you a sort of
as a
permission.
testimony to them.
Yeah.
So, I can see. Yeah. So not only are you not to share things with the crowd, this whole idea is you go to the priest to show what has happened, but go through the process that priest would expect. So you're almost, I guess, that's an intended peaceful sign. The fact that you've not been healed by a false prophet, you've been healed by the Son of God, and in the same vein and in the same way, in good faith, you are giving your testimony and your gift.
Well, remember, if you go back a few chapters, Christ says, "Do not think I have come to abolish the law or the prophets."
No, that's right.
So that there is a fulfilling of the law.
Yes.
He's not saying, "Oh, you're healed, great."
No, off you go.
Forget about that.
No.
Off you go skipping.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is what
Yeah.
That's a good point.
he's still leaning into the
Yeah, and
processes
I wonder
of the
perhaps
time.
if the fact that he doesn't want the crowd to hear, or he wants to keep it to himself apart from the priest, perhaps he doesn't want to ruffle too many feathers at that time. To create a big popularist type thing, He wants to,
I've heard I've heard an interpretation about that. He wanted it kept quiet because he didn't want crowds that just wanted healings and miracles. He wanted
popularism.
he wanted the faith. He didn't want to turn it into, like you said. But I found this passage very moving. Actually, I thought what it would be to be a leper. To one thing is to find yourself disgusting. That's a big thing. A lot of people struggle with that today. Also, the pain. There's with skin diseases, there's a lot of pain. You would be an outcast.
Yeah.
It was so infectious. People would, like you said, keep a distance from you. It would be incredibly lonely, and I think I struggle to fit in just because I'm maybe an odd, but would be nothing compared to a leper.
No, it wouldn't. No.
And for him to have also made the journey, how weak or sick he might have been, and then for it to be, it says immediately, doesn't it? Immediately his leprosy was cleansed. The feeling that would have been. I found it a lot of hope in that passage because it's a hopeless situation, and yet here he comes.
And you can think of the Christian communities in the first few centuries who, when plague and disease came, were noted for heroically not running to the hills, but even the great and good who had been baptized decided to roll up their sleeves and minister to those whom society abandoned. In those, whether it was leprosy or whether it was an outbreak of something. And some of the amazing saints, like St. Francis of Assisi, who has something of a personal epiphany when he gives his clothes to a leper, embraces him as a brother, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, seeds a truly subversive and radical way of living. With this parish here, we have a yearly leprosy mission. Where leprosy mission come, they give these quite grueling PowerPoints and videos with the modern day problems of leprosy that still exists. It's a fairly curable, manageable disease nowadays. I believe. In terms of infection, it's actually very hard to get it, but people do get it, and it can, but through various antibiotics and whatnot, it can be cured. It can be medically treatable. But you see some horrific cases of how some societies and cultures really ostracize those who've had this.
Really?
Every year this is one of our major charities as a parish that we support. Now in ancient culture, even more so in say Gentile culture, if someone's got this, it's divine punishment.
Yeah.
They're getting what they deserve, or they're getting it because of their ancestors. They're not even compassionate for them.
There's a moral judgment on them as well.
There's a complete lack of empathy.
I found that these things do promulgate through generations, and we've lived in the Middle East for about 3 years, and one of the things when I used to go fishing with my Arab buddies, is if they caught themselves on a hawk or on a tooth of a fish or something like that, or if a cat came near them or a dog came near them, they would be really panicky about it. And if they cut the hand, it would be, oh no, no. And another guy told me once, he said, you got to remember is these people, although they're in a modern society, there's shopping malls, nice cars, nice houses, all this stuff, they're only really 2 generations out of the desert, the Bedouins, you know. And if you got caught 2 generations ago in the desert, bitten by a fish or you'd die of sepsis, you'd be dead in the desert. It gets you because it's hot and it's dead. And that's why they're still really panicky about dogs and cats and fish hooks and things like that. And he says, and I think this is a little bit the leprosy, probably the feelings in generations and the indoctrination and the dogmas carry on through the generations subconsciously, you know. That might be why lepers are still seen as in an unusual, in our point of view, completely unusual way. Yeah. When he entered Capernaum, the centurion came to him, appealing to him and saying, "Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed in terrible distress." And he said to him, "I will come and cure him." The centurion answered, "Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only speak the word, and my servant will be healed. For I am also a man under authority with soldiers under me. And I say to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my slave, 'Do this,' and the slave does it." When Jesus heard him, he was amazed and said to those who followed him, "Truly, I tell you, in no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and will eat with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the heirs of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And to the centurion Jesus said, "Go, let it be done for you according to your faith." And the servant was healed in that hour.
There's a lot in that passage that I connected to, but one of the things I saw was that Christ is going to a centurion. The Roman state was tyrannical and oppressive and cruel, torturous. In many ways, they were the Nazis of their day. I mean, the National Socialist Party based a lot of their dogma on the Romans.
Yes.
And yet Christ is going to help a centurion. Now, you could make an argument he doesn't care about the centurion, he's just helping the servant, but he does talk about the centurion's faith. And I find it very moving to see Christ not caring about tribes or factions or us versus them, and going into a centurion's home, the home of what would be now an SS officer, and helping people out. I find that incredibly moving. Again, he's acting out everything he's asking us. He's not asking us of anything he wouldn't do himself. And to me, that's got a very powerful Christian element to it. It's not just helping a leper. The leper's not psycho. He's going in and helping what humans would call the enemy. There's a lot more in that passage I could go on about, but I want to hear what you have.
And it picks up on the Sermon on the Mount again, doesn't it? And what I alluded to in my own faith story from the Sermon on the Plain in Luke chapter 6, the love of enemies and the walking of the extra mile, which was a penalty which the Romans put on an occupied citizen to be able to force them to carry their pack for 1 mile. And Christ says, well, do the second mile. And of course, in the second mile, you can imagine the conversations are generous and different. That is a conversation about crossing boundaries. in a way that almost feels theologically unkosher. You know, why should I have anything to do with anybody who doesn't believe the same as me, or is on the other side politically, or is the enemy or the oppressor? And this speaks, I think, directly to that. Well, it's that famous Solzhenitsyn quote, isn't it, that after 10 years in the Gulag, he came to thank his prison, that he had come to realize that the division between us is not between nations or political parties or this or that, but it is a division that goes through each and every human heart, and that the purpose of life is the maturing of the human soul. And I think you see Christ here enacting this. You know, he didn't need to do this.
No.
He would have been seen as quite righteous, or, you know, in a sort of almost Judas Maccabean sense of, well, you're the latest series of oppressors, clear off. You know, you deserve this. I find it interesting at the moment that you can get, you know, when you get assassination attempts on politicians that we don't like. I know there's been one this morning. Of
a successful assassination. Horrible.
Wow.
I shouldn't phrase it like that. Charlie Kirk.
And you'll get voices who'll say, well,
I had a friend that said that to me last night. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
kind of.
He said it. Yeah. He said he hopes that someone else is next. I won't say who. But yes.
And you can see, you know, crikey, that, you know, that is going to be the point where we're judged at. You know, did we actually wish for the assassination of somebody that, you know, on the whole in our culture, we may not like politically, but we're quite happy with them being cancelled, liquidated, and their life being taken. And I think Christ gives us another way beyond that schism. I love the line, you know, which we use. It's at the summit of Holy Communion in the more Catholic liturgy, isn't it? Lord, I'm not worthy
To receive
you, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed.
Yeah.
It's the Centurion. It's the Centurion's mouth that is inviting us to Holy Communion.
That's right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's interesting, isn't it? To think
We
of
are
it like
here,
that.
if you put it back to your SS comparison, it is the voice of a fascist oppressor who is saying, this, despite all else, this is what I need, and you must come to it also.
And but he's received.
And that he's received. I mean, you know, and that's when I was doing A-level RE. In those formative years, I looked at some of the Marxist theologians and the sort of liberation theology. And initially I found the whole kind of cooperatives thing fascinating. And the way that, you know, ordinary people in the favelas were being encouraged to empower their lives and, you know, and act communally and that. And there was something quite kind of heroic on that. But I found, as I pushed further into that, there was also the alienation between to the other parts of the nation. You know, those who didn't believe this, or those who might have been associated with the other side politically. It seemed that they were going to, you know, that they were like the Egyptians at the Red Sea. They deserved chariots and all to be swept and drowned. And I think in the ministry of Christ here, there's a far deeper gospel instruction that is being given to us.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I see that quite a lot.
I had a parishioner here who was, he died during the first lockdown, and he had been a vicar's son during the Jersey occupation.
Oh, really?
I mean, him and his brother had an absolute hoot doing all this kind of underground resistance stuff with their dad, right under the noses of the Nazi occupation. Nevertheless, he said the most eeriest thing that he remembers out of all of that including all the hariness of thinking at any moment we could get shot or deported to some camp for this, was that on Sunday morning, German officers would come to church, sing the hymns, put money in the collection, and say, well, thank you very much for the service. And he said, we didn't know what to do.
No.
We were utterly stunned on the first day of occupation. The next day, Sunday, they turn up to church and sing the hymns, shake our hands, and go off.
I wonder what it must have been like giving a sermon.
Yeah. What do you do?
What do you do?
And I think the gospel calls us to a subtle life, and that's quite challenging. To look beyond our own boundaries.
Yeah.
What about you, Dad? What do you see?
I was picking up on a lot of the stuff that you said, but I think the big thing with me was the fact that the Centurion, like you say, who was part of the ruling National Socialist class at the time, said to him quite clearly, first of all, called him Lord.
No.
Straight away, Lord.
Yeah.
So he felt that he was his Lord. My servant is lying at home, and he said to him, how come I cure him? Centurion answered, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only speak the word, and my servant should be healed. So he had complete and utter faith, as Jesus said he had. And that is very unusual. And I think this is a beautiful thing that says that people can be put in pigeonholes and boxes and end up working and doing things that perhaps they shouldn't do, or perhaps then something comes along and changes them and they can change. So again, it's the forgiveness thing. We've got a centurion here who believes in Christ, who believes in God, who believes that Christ is the Son of God and has come to the world to heal. I can't imagine that centurion would have been very comfortable in his life after that point. As we've discussed, it's a challenge. He would have been massively challenged for what he would be asked to do, what he would be asking his people to do. He probably left. He probably bailed out if he could. I don't know. He couldn't have continued like that if he had that much faith in Jesus, or perhaps he was one of these people that tried to change things from the inside out. Who knows? It'd be interesting to know the story that continues.
Wouldn't it just?
Yeah.
Like the Centurion at the cross, isn't it? Which John Wayne had the part. Truly he was the Son of God. I wonder as well if Matthew puts this in to remind his readers at the time that the Christian faith is going viral in the Gentile world. And Matthew, I think, has a predominant leaning towards the synagogue Jewish communities that are spread out throughout the empire, and yet there's also this generosity. So look beyond those boundaries, because there were a lot of pious Gentiles. And I believe historically in the first couple of centuries that within Roman military ranks there was an attraction to Christianity, that it somehow made connections, which might seem completely at odds.
I don't think it is. You know why I don't think it is? I think because there would be a lot of human beings with humanity in the Roman legions being asked to do things they don't feel comfortable with. So I don't think every Roman centurion would be okay with what he's doing. They might be asked to do things, to execute people, to arrest people, and they might, I don't like this. So perhaps there is an element of people that could be captured by Christianity that weren't quite happy with what they were doing as a job.
Pushed a bit too far, perhaps.
Or just thought this isn't nice. I don't like it, what I'm doing to my fellow man.
And you can trace that right through to, say, the life of St. George, who, if history is correct, was probably part of the Praetorian Guard during the Diocletian persecution.
Yes.
And stood up and said, "No, I'm not going to do this." That there was, so that there were these unusual ranks of people who were actually drawn to Christianity in a seemingly, hostile, super patriarchal society. I know people would say, "Oh, that only 30, 40 years ago we were very patriarchal." It's nothing in comparison to Roman society. The way that women and children were treated as chattel, really. It's the Centurion's voice that calls us from the text, and as I said earlier on, calls us to communion.
And you made a lovely point there, Dad, where you said that we put people in boxes. And Christ, you just gave an example there where Christ was looking beyond that. But that's me. I think I should carry forward myself, really, from that.
Just one little last thing. I think the reason that I came up with that idea of people being centurions and not quite being comfortable with the stuff they'd done was something that happened to me. I was managing a company, and we were going through tough times, and we had to lay people off and make them redundant, which I did, and I was fine with that because it's just we had to do it. It was no choice. We'd survive, we wouldn't. Then later on, I had a situation where I had one of my employees wasn't really capable of doing the job that he was employed to do. I hadn't employed him, but he'd been employed previously. When it became obvious he was struggling and he couldn't do the job, he just couldn't do the job. But he was a nice chap, he was a really nice bloke, and he tried hard. And he was, under stress and pressure, and he was making mistakes because he was trying to do the job, but he couldn't do it. He just didn't have the skills to do it, unfortunately. Lovely fella. You should go fishing with him. So I've got this decision now, where I'm thinking, well, with the skills that he's got, I'm worried about him getting another job, and all this sort of stuff. And I was under terrific pressure from it. And eventually I actually got in touch with a priest of mine and ran it through him because I was really concerned. I just felt terrible about it. Anyway, we did it all very honestly and very openly, and to my amazement, the guy said to me, he said, "Thank God, Chris, thank God you've said that." He says, "I can't really do the job, it's not for me, I needed the push. I needed to do something else." And this immense relief came over me. But I'm thinking at that time, I wish I did done anything but been a managing director at that particular moment. Yeah. And I'm wondering if that's how a Centurion would feel. Because sometimes you've got to do what you're asked to do, and it can be very uncomfortable. And
maybe the Centurion, like your worker, needed the push as well.
Yeah, and he had God with him at that moment, and I suppose I did when because I asked Lee to help me through it, and he said, "No, you're doing the right thing." That's
the horror, I think, is if you extract society, if you extract people from society like this, if we have a society that doesn't have centurions, what a horrible communal life it becomes, where everyone is just thinking about their job themselves, trying to please those above them, benefactors, and pushing down those who are below them. Christian society is built on the Centurion's heart.
Yeah.
The people who are going to wake up at 3 a.m. and think, I don't know if I can do this. I'm really struggling to make the right decision. Not what can I get out of this?
No.
Or I must robotically just obey
I'm going to look myself look great. Yeah.
It is that kind of what would have been, I think, in Roman society seen as quite unheroic behaviour.
Oh yes, it would be weak.
Wobbly,
it would be seen as weak.
Wobbly people don't make Roman peace.
No.
But here, actually, that they're the undergirding of the kingdom of God.
Yeah, very much.
Okay, Dad, we just read through a few passages with Father Daniel there. We read through Jesus cleansing the leper and also healing the Centurion's servant. And I think we got a lot out of it. I think he had a lot to say. You had a lot of good points as well. How do you feel after reading through those passages?
Yeah, they were good. They definitely the one that struck me mostly was the Centurion. You know, and for reasons that I gave there was a certain amount of understanding of a person doing an horrible job that really was not horrible inside, you know.
Yeah.
And the Centurion often wasn't. And I think from that, the really interesting thought in my mind would I would have loved to have known that Centurion's onward journey.
Yeah.
And what happened to him and how his life changed and stuff. But now interesting, and it was really, really nice to meet Father Dan and listen to his story of him coming to faith and the things that made him get there. I had a lot of resonances with that story in my own journey in faith of how he felt God's love. And, you know, when his grandfather died and he felt supported.
Yeah.
I have lots of resonances, different to that, but lots of similar resonances in my life. So nice to meet Daniel. Hopefully we'll bump into him again.
I hope to see him. Well, all of our guests have been amazing. As soon as I've finished we've had Father Andrew, we've had Father John, and now we've had Father Daniel. Every time we finish, I immediately think, we've got to get him back again.
Yeah.
It's so great to hear.
There.
I mean, they're such interesting people. They've got so much to add. Sometimes just giving us context because they're educated in this stuff.
Sometimes it's a bit like the Moses thing in the Leper book. I didn't quite understand what that meant about giving.
Yeah, as Moses commanded.
And he explained that, which made perfect sense.
Yeah,
so it's great having somebody around that's got enough, experience and knowledge that can explain these little things for us.
And I felt I connected with him on a few points. He talked about how for a while his faith was cerebral. Logically it made sense, but he didn't feel
that's
it.
Right.
And I think that's pretty much where I am now.
Yeah.
I understand. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And I could, if I was arguing with some arsey friend of mine that wanted to tell me God didn't exist, I could rip him apart in an intellectual debate way.
Yeah.
But the feeling isn't really there at the moment.
No.
But what was so lovely was he said that came, and not only did it come in time, it came through what was actually quite a painful part of his life.
I do feel sometimes that we find God in our darkest hours.
Yeah.
And I perhaps it's because we look for him more harder in those darkest hours. But I found him in dark hours. And also when God does wonderful things, it's usually against adversity.
Yeah.
I remember you find, I think, you get little things, what I've heard people call God moments. And I remember when I was in hospital once with I was in hospital for a long time when my hip got infected, when I had a new hip, and I was in hospital for a long time, and I couldn't walk properly. And then one day, there was a chaplain, the Hope Hospital chaplain, came to me and gave me mass, etc., which is really good. Anyway, she'd gone, I didn't know where she was, and I thought, I've got to get up and I've got to move, and they keep telling me I've got to move. Anyway, I got up this walking frame and I managed to get out of bed, and I'm walking down the hospital corridor, and she's in a side room with this old guy. And she said to me, and she said, "Oh, Chris, you're up and about," she shouted through the door. And I said, "Yeah," I said, I never thought I'd get here, but I've managed to do it. I'm actually managing to do it. I've managed to get down here. It's incredible, and I've moved on and moved back. That's all that happened. And then later on, she nipped into me and said, "Chris, that was a God moment." She said, "I got this old fella there that got the same problem with you, had lost completely all hope.
Wow.
desolation. I might as well die. I'm never going to walk again. And all this sort of really down. He said, the next thing that happened is we're saying a prayer for him. And the next thing that happened is you hobbled past the door saying, I never thought I'd get to this. Now look at me. I'm walking down the hospital. Look how far I've got. She said it was an incredible God moment.
Yeah.
And you can put that down to coincidence if you want. But what I found is there are a lot of coincidences like that. And that's when you start realising that God's there all the time and he's working. And if you can keep putting it down to coincidences, or you can come to a conclusion and think, nah. But I think for the day that it really hit me hard was when I had a direct prayer answered, but that's another old story, a completely new story. But yeah, I know what you mean. You've got to get that connection of love with God. It's almost like he has to speak to you. It's all right learning the lines. It's all right becoming logical in your arguments. But you've got to feel God in your heart. You've got to feel his love. And when that happens, bingo, you get it.